Elaine Royal. Brake lights. Brake lights, Elaine Royal.
Thank you, Mr. Contest Chair.
You're welcome.
Do you trust me? Do you? Do you? Generations before us have always thrived and followed the illuminating light of a story. But what happens when that light is broken or hard to see? Steve Jobs once stated that the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. He added that the storyteller gets to decide the vision, the values, and the agenda of generations to come. I'm going to do something a bit unorthodox here. I'm going to tell you the end of this story right here in the beginning. Why? Because the answer is simple. It's simply how you tell a story. You'll see in the end, I'm nothing more than a character in whatever story you tell yourself as I tell you mine. To the contest chair, fellow Toastmasters, and guest, earnestly, I hope you can't see it right now. Be it real or imagined, some of us have to navigate a little differently than others. Day to day, I try my best to blend in with my other coworkers, but all the while, I'm secretly hoping that I don't get a dreaded phone call from Human Resources asking me why I conveniently left out my criminal background history. It's not easy to disclose to anyone how I spent 12 cycles of my life restricted from the world behind bars. But yet, here I stand. 20 years ago, I was 20-something, ironically enough, dating a cop. One night, I'm driving down the freeway, utterly starving, racing home from work, and I get pulled over. The officer stated that my brake light was out. I hand over standard license and registration, only for the officer to return to tell me he's taking me into police custody. For what? Since when did a broken brake light become an arresting offense? But you gotta love the boys in blue, they say. Seeing as how I was only a block away from my apartment, the officer allows me to drive home, but this is where things begin to get dark. For reasons unknown, the officer yells out, "Hey, why don't you grab a..." He stated that girls my age always seem to have lots of those. For reasons unknown, the officer orders me to sit in the front seat with him. I was young. I complied. Right then, it began to rain, and you could no longer tell my tears from the raindrops. I made a bold attempt to look over at the officer, and right at that moment, from the corner of his piercing blue eyes, he makes this downward gesture to me and asks me if I wanted it. Jail was starting to seem ideal in that moment, and I could see it just then in the distance, but the officer didn't turn there. No, he makes a right turn down a dirt road. He gets out, opens my car door, and tells me it's time to get into the back seat of his police cruiser. I was young, and I complied. He truly was a dirty cop. Or was he a dirty cop? Simply because I just told you he was a dirty cop. I also told you it was raining that night and he turned down a dirt road, and when rain and dirt meet, it makes mud, which is exactly what the officer got on the bottom of his pants leg, making him, by definition of terms, a dirty cop. Not because anything salacious happened in the backseat of that police cruiser. No, riding in the backseat of that police cruiser was standard police procedure in which the officer had thoroughly explained the entire ride. Moments just before that, when the officer was driving down the road making the downward gesture, true, he asked me if I wanted it, his sandwich, his chips, his soda. At the beginning of this story, I told you that I was hungry, and I told the officer too, and here he was kindly offering me his half-eaten lunch. Moments just before that, when I was making my way downstairs, the officer yelled out, "Hey, why don't you grab a cardigan, sweater, a hoodie or something?" He stated that county jail was kind of cold and that girls my age always seemed to have lots of those. I went to jail that night for 12 cycled hours, as in 12 cycled hours of the clock, for a mere speeding ticket that the ex-boyfriend cop didn't pay for. Sidebar, ladies, did you know that when you break up with the guy, he no longer pays for things anymore? Now see, that's dirty. But subsequently, despite the breakup, the ex-boyfriend cop is exactly who bailed me out. And the officer that night, despite that being a horrific situation for me, was truly one of the kindest men I'd ever met. Sometimes you really have to love the boys in blue. I love the boys in blue. Stories are crafted, made up, and we consume so many via Facebook, social media, podcasts, never questioning the narrative. You see, if what Steve Jobs stated was true, and that the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world, then beware of the storyteller, my friends. For all you know, the story they're telling you could be conveniently made up. Or stranger than that, conveniently all true. Consider this. The age-old adage is still true. Never ever judge a book by its cover. I'm still a content of character kind of girl. Secondly, if you remember nothing else, always remember a pair of lips could tell you absolutely anything. And above all, when you leave here today, there could be danger ahead, so check your brake lights, people. You may not be as lucky as that girl in the story that you just told yourself about. But luckily for me, in my story, I was. Do you trust me? Mr. Contest Chair.